where best friends and next-door neighbors, Willow and Lillian, spill the tea on murder, mysteries, and other things that go bump in the night. So get your favorite teacup ready, and let's get into it. Welcome to Cruelty Podcast. This is Lillian, and with me is Willow.
Hello.
Fuck everything.
Everything is
Poison.
Poison is the song. I was going to say garbage, but I'm sorry.
It's poison garbage.
It's poison garbage.
I'm in a dumpster. Leave me alone. I'm
the
so
whole
grumpy.
of the United States is pretty much a dumpster fire right now. I know we're not going to get political or anything, but
I'll get political. Fuck it. But not right now, just because I'm fucking tired.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
That debate just rotted my whole brain.
Listen. My dog is safe. I'm not too worried about it.
Your dog is safe?
You didn't hear the part where Trump was like saying that
the
Haitian
I've been
immigrants
listening
were
to
eating our
remixes
pets.
of that into a song all day.
Yeah, same.
Eat the cat. Eat the cat.
Better eat that cat.
Happy.
You know what I'm saying?
Makes me so
Hey! Anyway, we're covering famous 90s cases. I don't want to talk anymore. Willow, what do you have for us today?
Today we're going to be talking about the Lorena Bobbitt case, which I don't think that we could have had this month, Notorious 90s, without it.
No.
Clearly. Yeah, it happened around 94 into 95. It was still being talked about. So it was kind of like the peak pinnacle of 90s. I don't know. It was
I like
just
the
everywhere.
alliteration there, and I was hoping you were going to go with another P word, but you didn't, so
I
won't.
didn't. I didn't. But yeah, I don't know. Like, her face was everywhere. This story was everywhere. It was on every headline across the country, every news outlet, every talk show. Everyone was talking about what happened. Lorena's face was everywhere. And she kind of became an overnight, almost like cult classic in a sense that, like, the women loved her. The women, you know, she was like basically the poster person for like the angry woman of society at that point. And she also became the punchline for a lot of really disgusting jokes by the men. So we'll get into it. Lorena Bobbitt was born Lorena Lenore Gallo in 1969 in Ecuador. She moved to Venezuela with her parents and two siblings when she was around 5 years old. Her father was a dental technician, and the family was pretty well off. They lived a pretty decent middle-class life. Her parents were devout Catholic and raised the children with very strict family rules. Lorena never had a boyfriend. She honestly wasn't even allowed to date until she was much older. And when she did date, she had to have a chaperone with her. So it really didn't get very far with boys growing up. That was just kind of too awkward for her. But she loved her family regardless. She didn't really feel like she needed a boyfriend anyways. It didn't really feel like she was missing out on a lot. She had really good friends. She really liked school. And she liked spending time at home. So I don't know. It wasn't detrimental to her to not have a boyfriend. Lorena.
Word.
I know, right? Because that's not me as a child. I was obsessed with both boys and girls and having a boyfriend or girlfriend the entire time. So I'm proud of her. Lorena visited the United States for her quinceañera, and she knew immediately when she arrived that she wanted to live there. She told her parents, and they tried to get the family over, but unfortunately they were unable to immigrate. So Lorena, went back home, studied hard. She got good grades. She graduated high school, and she sought out higher education in the U.S. In 1987, she got her student visa and enrolled in a community college in Manassas, Virginia. There, she got a job as a nanny to pay for her way through school. The woman that she nannied for, a woman by the name of Jana Bisutti, she quickly became her closest friend. She, Jana, had owned a nail salon, which was becoming more and more successful, and Lorena really admired Jana for her ability to make such a life for herself, to build this business from the ground up, take care of her son as a single mother, have this very nice house, have this very nice lifestyle that she essentially built, by herself with her own two hands. And Lorena just really, really looked up to her for this. So one day she kind of sat her down and was like, you know, I really need to start making more money than just what I'm making nannying. And Jana was like, okay, come work for me at the nail shop. Like, dope. She doesn't know anything about nails. She has no idea. But Jana's willing to teach her. And they worked out a deal to where Lorena could work at the nail salon while the child was at school. And then whenever he got off the bus, she would be there to greet him and take care of him while Jana kept, you know, doing whatever work she needed to do. So it ended up working out well. She could have both jobs and continue working for Jana with both jobs. Which honestly, like, we really got to understand, like, kind of one of the background main things of this case is that Lorena is bilingual and English is not her first language. And this is not her birth country. Like, she is an adult when she moves to the United States. So everything is foreign to her. The lifestyles, the way of life, like, it's all foreign to her. And her English is very broken. So the fact that she has a close friend that can also be her boss, her provider of income, is just a godsend for her. Like, this is a very special thing for her. And she really does cherish this. And I'm really glad for her, because I know that it is very, very difficult to get anywhere when you can barely communicate. Like, that just must be so stressful. But she was determined. She was a quick learner, and she became a really good nail tech. Now, Lorena met U.S. Marine John Wayne Bobbitt in 1988 at a club for enlisted men. One night in 1988, Lorena had just, like, gone out with some friends, and she just happened to lose her friends on the dance floor, and she just happened to strike up a conversation with this very handsome, smooth-talking Marine. He charmed her right off of her feet. She had trouble with her English, like I said, but he didn't really seem to mind. He seemed intrigued, and she was fascinated by him and all of his travels in the Marines. She had dreams of seeing the world, and he had seen a lot of it, so he had a lot of stories to share. And I don't know, she was starstruck. She was really starstruck by him. They talked all night long. Lorena later told Vanity Fair, quote, "I thought John was very handsome, blue eyes, a man in uniform, you know. He was almost like a symbol, a Marine, fighting for the country. I believed in this beautiful country. I was swept off my feet. I wanted my American dream." The woman that Lorena was staying with was an older Latina woman who was also Catholic, very much like her mother. And so she kept a lot of her family's core values and strict rules and guidelines for Lorena while she was living in this house as well. So when it came to dating, I don't believe that she necessarily needed a chaperone, but he did call, like, the next day to talk to Lorena, and the woman answered the phone and said that, you know, like, you're going to have to come here, you're going to have to meet me face to face, and we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to have to approve of you before you're able to talk to Lorena. And I mean, unlike a lot of other boys who kind of were turned off by this, John was like, okay, bet, like, I'll be there. And he ended up coming over. He ended up talking to the woman and sweeping her off her feet. And she just absolutely loved him. He charmed her just the same as he had done Lorena. And then he got her permission to date. And honestly, she loved him so much that she basically let Lorena see him as much as she liked. And, you know, of course, Lorena wasn't going to sleep with him before marriage. And marriage was a very big deal for her. Again, Catholic family, like, family was everything for her. And it didn't take long before John proposed. And they both didn't have very much money. John actually didn't have money for a real ring. It was reported that, like, he found a ring. Like, he just found a ring on the ground at the bar and was like, "Will you marry me? I will get you a better ring later."
Dang.
Yeah, which in a lot of senses, that's still very romantic. I don't give a shit about money. All I care about is love. But you'll see. Yeah. So, yeah, Lorena was only 20 years old when they wed on June 18th, 1989, literally just a couple months later. They've only known each other for a few months. And it didn't take long for the real John Wayne Bobbitt to show through this facade. He drank constantly. Every dollar she earned was his, and he spent their money frivolously. They were barely making ends meet as it was. And just a week or two after their wedding, John invited a friend from New York to come stay at their place. And this just became a really strange habit of his. He just constantly invited friends over, whether it was his friends, his cousins, his brother. Like, he just invited dude friends to come over, sleep on their couch, and party with him all night. And they barely had a relationship. Like, she would try to take him on dates. She would try to, sit down and eat dinner with him. She would try to do anything with her husband. And he would much rather hang out with his friends, get drunk, and go to the bar and be rambunctious. He very soon began partying, doing drugs, cheating on her, and controlling her every move when he was around her, and otherwise ignoring her. Like, this was hell for her. She thought she was getting her fairy tale, her American dream, her, handsome Marine and beautiful family. Less than a week into their marriage, it just went completely south. The rug was just pulled right from under her. This was a nightmare. This was an absolute nightmare. A month into their marriage is when the physical abuse started. One night he got drunk at the bar and demanded that he drive home. He drunkenly swerved into another lane, and Lorena grabbed the wheel to get them safely into the correct lane, and he got so enraged that he hit her several times. And before I get in, I forgot to do trigger warnings for this case.
I'll put them on.
Ton of trigger warnings for this case. Domestic violence, domestic abuse, sexual assault, dismemberment, lots of drug use, alcohol abuse, big laundry list of trigger warnings for this. But just to preface this is a very big man, and she is a very small woman.
Yes,
he is a Marine.
That should be noted.
Yeah, he is a Marine. He is strong. He is built. The hands are big and strong as fuck. So when he is hitting her, not saying, you know what I mean, though? Like,
yeah, she's just so much smaller than him.
She's so much smaller than him that these blows are really impacting her. Like, she is in a lot of pain. This isn't something she can just fight back from. Not only that, she comes from a very peaceful family. She's not used to violence. She's never seen violence. Her parents never even yelled at each other, much less raised a hand to anyone in the household. She's never been hit, ever. And so now she's trapped in a car with her drunk husband, his drunk friend in the back seat, and she's being just punched over and over again in the passenger seat with nowhere to go, nowhere to escape. There's no way that she can get out of arm's reach from him. And this is only a month into their marriage. Like, this is terrifying. And, this is the person that she loves. This is the only person that she's ever truly loved. This is the one person.
To me, it's what makes domestic violence so insidious, is that it's coming from somebody you loved and trusted.
Yeah.
It hurts more that way.
It does.
It just does.
Because you adore them.
Yeah.
That's your favorite person.
Your best friend.
And they're hurting you.
And you're so dismayed.
Yeah. And you hope that the person that you love can come back, because you can kind of see it in them. Like, you can kind of try to
then
pull
that person's in there,
mm-hmm.
and they're still doing that.
Mm-hmm.
That'll haunt you.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's terrible. And how scared you are.
And they're traveling like 80 miles an hour down the fucking highway
I've
right
been
now.
Through that, and
like,
it's so terrifying.
Terrifying.
Yeah, so scary.
So yeah, she more than just feared her life in this moment. She feared her future. Like, if this is a month in and this is what's happening, what the fuck is about to happen? So for the next 4 years of their marriage, it was an absolute living hell. Every day was a new horror. He used his military training and overpowering strength to harm Lorena in every way he could. He'd punch her, kick her, twist her arms and legs until they were seriously injured. He'd drag her by the hair, kick her in the ribs and the chest. Once he'd beaten her, he'd force himself on her. Always yelling at her, berating her, hurling insults and racial slurs, always talking down to her as if she was unintelligent for the mere fact that she spoke Spanish and that she was an immigrant, threatening to destroy her visa to get her deported if she ever tore out a line. He treated her like property. She was his wife, so he could, quote, do as he would please with her. Her body was covered in bruises and defensive wounds. She was frail from not eating, which he would make fun of her for. He'd use what she would call bad words against her, and this is what broke my heart. This is one of the main things that broke my heart in this case, because I watched the entire trial with her speaking, and she comes from such a sheltered and peaceful household. She did not like cuss words. Cuss words were scary. Cuss words were a big no in her eyes. And so when she was quoting him, when they would ask her what did he say during this and this and this, she would say he said this, some bad words, this bad word, and she would censor herself with the term bad word. And this was a huge part of her trauma, was the bad words being yelled at her.
Well, yeah.
Because, he knew that was a thing.
Yeah, of course, and he used it
and
they always
used it against
do.
her.
Uh-huh.
It just breaks my whole heart. He'd yell at her for her Spanish features, not being blonde-haired or blue-eyed, and that because of that, she didn't deserve him. He'd tell her that he wanted a fuller woman and that she needed to eat more. She was too skinny, but she couldn't. The amount of physical and sexual abuse she was experiencing on a daily basis, she was frozen in shock. She couldn't stomach food most days. When she went to work, she'd be covered in bruises, caked on with makeup, bandages from accidentally falling down. She tried to keep a straight face, to keep up the facade that they were happy and marriage was going great, because it was embarrassing.
It's humiliating.
It is very humiliating.
It's hard to describe why it is, but it just is. I don't have it in me to describe why it's
so feels like a failure.
It
feels like something that you failed at.
It feels like, well, I guess I couldn't see it coming, so I must be stupid.
Right.
And weak.
Right. My last marriage lasted 4 years, and he didn't hurt me or anything, but it was embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. I couldn't even make it last,
I'm so messed up the person that I love is hurting me because I disappoint them so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's partly that, too. Mm-hmm. Even though logically that's not it. That's how it feels.
I'm not good enough. It's the constant feeling of not being good enough.
Never be good enough for
mm-hmm.
anyone.
Yeah. And so, part of helping yourself get through that is by putting on that facade of everything's fine. It's that fake it till you make it. Honestly, sometimes that does help you get through, but it's not like she didn't try to get away. She tried going to police numerous times, but they never helped. There was countless cases that she tried to open against him. It never worked. She tried to tape record her abuse, but one time whenever he was going through her purse to get some money, he found the tape recorder.
It's scary.
It's terrifying. Because he pushed play. He listened to maybe a fraction of a second of it, but he knew exactly what it was. It was just him yelling. And he just went into a full blind rage. He beat her until she wasn't moving on the ground, and then he sexually assaulted her right there. Without a single thought. At one point, Lorena became pregnant. She was so excited. All she wanted was a baby and a family. But when she told John, he immediately said that they were going to go to a clinic and terminate the pregnancy. She begged him. She told him that she wanted to keep the baby, that it was her baby, and if she wanted to keep it, it was fine. And if he didn't want it, then they could just get a divorce.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't have that.
No.
He demanded that she do what she was told and go to the clinic. The fight dragged out between the two of them, and eventually Lorena surrendered. She didn't know if she could raise a baby in these conditions anyways. She hadn't grown up in a single-parent household. She didn't know what it was like to raise a child without a father. She didn't know how to navigate all of this on top of John's abuse. Like, what if he harmed the baby too?
Yeah.
So she decided to go to the clinic with John and have the pregnancy terminated. Now, at the clinic, Lorena was just terrified of this procedure. She'd never undergone any type of medical treatment before. She didn't know what to expect. She was trembling in that waiting room. And he knew this. He knew how scared she was. And he thought that she was stupid and just used her lack of understanding of medical procedures against her. He saw her shaking and freaking the fuck out, terrified of what was about to happen, and he leaned over and he told her that the needle that they were going to use during this procedure was going to go through her bones and kill her.
My God.
He said, most people don't live through this. They stick a needle right through your bones and they'll kill you.
What an evil motherfucker.
And she's just sobbing. She's just sobbing uncontrollably because not only like now is she scared that she'll die, but she's also like, how dare you say that? Like, fuck you. Like that, like you're hurting me even more. And so she's just an unconsolable mess at this point. She is crying so hard at her husband and he's laughing at her. He is very loudly laughing. It was just so much of a commotion that the nurse came over to comfort her. Lorena later said in court, quote, "The nurse had to come up and ask what had happened to me, what was wrong, because I was crying. I told her that I want my husband to be away from me, and she took me into another room." Like, how bad it has to be.
Yeah.
That you have to ask a nurse to remove you from your husband.
Bad.
Now, this was the biggest heartbreak of her entire life at this point for Lorena. The beating, the name calling, that she could easily blame on alcohol and, whatever. But this was really hard to forgive. The two separated in October of 1991. Lorena was doing pretty well on her own. She was making money, she was spending more time with friends, and most importantly, she was happy and she was healing and she was away from him. But of course, after a year of silence, John came crawling back, begging for her forgiveness, swearing he'd stopped drinking and that he was going to church and he was turning his life around and it was all for her and he was going to make it up to her. But the second she stepped foot in that house with that man again,
it was a nightmare all over again.
It was the same old nightmare replaying over and over again. Lorena was just tired of this hell and she wanted out for good. On June 21st, 1993, just 3 days after their 4-year wedding anniversary, Lorena filed for divorce and began the process of filing for a protective order. 2 days later, on June 23rd, 1993, John Wayne Bobbitt came home in the middle of the night, viciously drunk, beat her, and violently sexually assaulted her. And I need to really get you guys to understand this without being too graphic and redundant, because this man used this woman as property. If he wanted it, he was going to get it. And it didn't matter how many times a day. And I'm not going to go through every single assault that she witnessed or endured throughout the 4 years of their marriage. But just know it was a lot. It was extensive. And this man sent her to the hospital many, many times. She was bleeding profusely many, many times. This man injured her when he assaulted her. So don't think that this is just, I don't know. It's not like there's a spectrum of like light to dark assaults, but you know what I mean? Like, this was a very violent act. And this one, and specifically, after all of these years of this horrendous pain from this man, this time, this was one of the worst that she ever witnessed, if not the worst one that she ever witnessed. She, after, she said that it felt like her insides were ripping out. And the more it hurt, the more he enjoyed it.
Oh, God.
He strangled her till she nearly passed out. Like, she was in immense pain. After he'd passed out, she went down to the kitchen to get a glass of water to compose herself. She stood there in the dark kitchen with just the light from the refrigerator, just in pain, in shock, trembling, trying to just regain herself. All she could think about was the abuse. The images of that night replayed over and over in her mind. She started to compile memories from all the other traumatic experiences that she had suffered from her husband. She couldn't get the images out of her mind. In court, she had trouble finding the right words for it, but she said, quote, "I remember many things. Since then, I remember a lot of things that he said to me. I remember the first time he raped me. I remember when he told me about the syringes that go through my bones and I was going to die. I remember the put-downs that he told me. There were just so many pictures in my head. There were just pictures there in my head. I remember the insults, the bad words that he told me. I remember every time he had anal sex with me and it hurt. I remember everything. Everything." She didn't realize that she was having PTSD flashbacks.
No, but that's exactly
she didn't
how
have the
she's
words
describing it as.
Yeah. All the times he had hit her, he'd kicked her. All the times that he'd broken her ribs and blacked out her eyes. All the times that he'd called her names and cussed at her. All the sexual assaults, the violations, the degradation. She doesn't remember picking up the Jinsu carving knife. But she does remember seeing it. From there, her memory was a blur. She was in complete disassociative state and traumatic shock. She doesn't remember walking past his friend passed out on the couch into their bedroom, pulling back the blankets, nor does she remember taking the knife in one hand, grabbing his dick in the other, and cutting it off. She doesn't remember leaving the house. She doesn't remember getting in her car and driving. All she remembers is that mentally she came to while driving her car down the road on the way to the nail salon. She didn't know why she was going there. She was kind of an autopilot. And then she looked down. Her hand was covered in blood, and in her hand, grasped tightly in her hand, was her husband's dick. She panicked. She didn't know what to do. She was kind of like, ew, what? Like, she just out of nowhere realized what had happened. And she panicked. She rolled down the window and she threw it out the window, which is probably what I would have done at that point.
And for anyone who says that you can't go into autopilot like that and drive,
I do it almost every time I drive.
It's a long story and I won't get into it, but I was driving to meet someone. Halfway through, I decided I was too tired. It was like a 4 or 5 hour drive. And so I decided to just turn around and come home. And that is the last thing I remember. I woke up in my driveway, asleep in my still running car. Talk about fucking scary.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything. I
Yeah.
could have killed myself or somebody else.
There's a word for it. I saw it.
It's a type of hypnosis.
Yeah, but yeah, it's part of your brain has an autopilot feature, especially if it's roads that you've driven many, many times that you're used to it.
It was.
Your brain will go in autopilot mode and will get you home safely. I don't know how it works.
It did because I think I was asleep, at least mostly.
Yeah.
And I've been diagnosed with both PTSD and CPTSD. I have flashbacks. I have memory gaps.
Yeah.
So this is all true.
Right.
And
1000%.
when this happened, y'all, you have to understand the jokes were relentless.
It was bad. It was really bad. Howard Stern, all of them.
Everybody.
It was bad.
And
It was
you
bad.
never heard that she was tortured.
You never heard
abused
any of
woman.
that. No. You just heard crazy Latina woman got jealous and cut off his dick.
That is not what happened.
No. But that's the narrative he wrote. That's the narrative he said.
And that's the one that took hold.
Because it was you think it's a man's world today. The 90s?
Even more so.
It was the man. Like, everything. If a man said it, it was fucking gospel truth.
And she became this joke.
Oh, overnight. And she couldn't go anywhere. Oh my God, it was just so bad for her. So she throws the dick out the window. She calls 911, and they arrest Lorena, and they get John to the hospital. But they have to get her to the hospital because they know that she is in a state. You know what I mean? Like, she's not ready to just go to the police station. So they get her they go to the same fucking hospital, which every time, this happens in a lot of cases, but every time this happens in a case, it just creeps me out to the core when the perpetrator and the victim are in the same hospital. But she does, they try to ask her, okay, you know, like, where did you throw it out the window? And again, she's like coming out of a disassociative state, but she does remember right as she looked down at her hand, she was passing by a gas station. So she was able to tell them what road she was on and that she was passing by a gas station. Police go to the site. They find the dick. They grab a cup of ice from the 7-Eleven. They got the dick in the cup of ice to the hospital and reattached it to John during a 9-hour-long surgery. And from there, fucking John went on to star in a film called John Wayne Bobbitt Uncut, which was released in 1994, literally just months after his surgery, while the trial was still going on, which I don't think he should have been able to do that.
I don't either.
But he released this sex tape, and it became one of the highest grossing adult films of all time. He basically instantly made $1 million like that. He said later, quote, "A porno seemed like the best way to show my penis worked, only it wasn't all the way healed yet. I realize now that was the point." He's such a douchebag.
Oh, I fucking hate this guy.
His urologist, Jim Sine, later said in a 2020 interview, quote, "It's not often that our work is displayed in that fashion." Just gag.
Girl.
Not all men, but I hate men.
I hate them all. And if you're a man and listening to this, I hate you very gently and sweetly. But I
sure
still hate you.
men too.
Huh?
If you're a man out there listening to our podcast, you're probably with
You can
us.
self-loathe, baby.
You probably agree.
Self-loathe for me. It gives me enjoyment.
In 1996, he starred in another adult film, this one entitled Frankenpenis. And this one would go on to fund his penis enlargement surgery.
I hate this guy
He
so
later
much.
said that he had sex with over 70 women just to prove that it worked.
Well, I've banged more bitches than that, sir.
I know you have, and I'm really proud of you for that.
Thanks.
Now, remember, Lorena Bobbitt is, again, a sheltered Catholic girl, absolutely traumatized by this man. They take her to the hospital for questioning where he is. And so she finds out that he's in the same hospital. She's in complete distress. She is scared. She's looking over her shoulder. She's watching the door at all times. And she's confused. You know, she's terrified and confused at the same time. She has no idea what happened, but she can piece it together.
She's not an idiot.
She knows. She doesn't know by memory what happened, but she knows what happened. And so now she knows that she is in a lot of trouble for something she doesn't remember doing. And now she's all of a sudden waking up facing 20 plus years in prison, possibly. Like, this is...
And he's going to get nothing for what he did to her.
She's never done anything wrong a day in her life. She's never even thought a bad word, or done a bad deed. She's never stolen a piece of bubble gum.
He tormented and tortured her until she snapped, lost it, and had no control over herself.
Yes.
Yeah.
She wanted to take away the one thing that was hurting her the most.
Yeah.
I think it's Indonesia. I could be wrong, but I heard this right before I came over. I believe it's Indonesia, but there is, I know there's several countries that actually allow the woman to cut off the man's penis if he cheats or sexually assaults her. And in many countries, it is still illegal to cheat on your wife. which I honestly agree with, because
I do not.
I think that there should be some sort of charge, because the possibilities of spreading an STD and therefore killing your wife or the person that you're cheating on is high in this area. We'll just say
think
that.
the whole everything needs to be redone. Everything's too fucked up to even have this conversation. It's how I feel about the death penalty, you know?
That's true. Yeah.
I can't ethically
Right.
support it, even when there are times I think absolutely we should take someone out and shoot
Right.
them in the face for
Right.
what they've done.
Right.
But because of the systemic racism
Mm-hmm.
and inherent injustice in the entire prison system and justice system,
Right.
I just can't advocate for anything like that because
Right.
of the abuses of the system that would definitely arise.
I just think
And how it would be used against people of color and
Exactly.
women immediately.
Exactly.
Immediately.
I just think of like Emmett Till, like somebody could just be like, oh, he assaulted me, and then
Yeah.
they get killed
Exactly.
without any proof.
So the whole thing's broken and we can't fix it, and fuck everything.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
indeed.
Absolutely. But yeah, so she's in this hospital room. She's being charged with malicious wounding, is the technical term for it. And they just start questioning her. They start drilling her. Her friend Jana is there with her, thankfully. But again, English is still very difficult for her. She's only been in this country for 5 years. So they questioned her for 16 hours straight. No food, no sleep. She's still in a lot of pain from the assault from the night before. She's having these really confusing accusations being thrown at her because she really doesn't have a full grasp on the situation. And she doesn't have a full grasp on the terms and languages being used on her. It's a very, very confusing time for her. And I just think this interrogation just has absolutely no compassion or sympathy. I feel so bad for her during this. But afterwards, after she was questioned, she was sent to a 45-day stay in a psychiatric facility. She was diagnosed with depression, PTSD, and panic disorder. So this was, of course, help her in court. The trial was an absolute shit show.
Yeah, it was.
When it comes to the press, the media, everything like that, like this was big. Crowds of people surrounded the courthouse. People sold merch with penises on it, shirts that say "cut above the rest," signs that were like "Lorena Bobbitt is my hero." Like there were like huge crowds of mostly women who are like pro Lorena Bobbitt. Like, yeah, like I love you, Lorena, you're my hero. Like Lorena didn't want to be exalted like that. And then crowds of people that were like pro John Wayne Bobbitt. Like, I don't know. It was a shit show and a mockery of the entire situation. Nobody took it seriously at all. At least her point of view.
Yeah. Well,
You know?
no, they didn't.
John was charged with marital sexual assault. He was tried first and then acquitted. The term wife rape had only recently been made a crime in all 50 states, like right before this trial. So there's not a lot of things.
There was no precedence for them to fall back on as part of the issue.
Absolutely. And it was basically impossible to prove at that time as well. They just didn't have the technology or, know-how of doing that. It's just so baffling to me that until 1995, you could sexually assault your wife and it was okay.
Legal.
Well, women and children were property, like technically property until like the 1950s or something like that. Like insanity. So Lorena's trial was very long, very torturous. She was mortified to take the stand and to have to relay all of the details of the abuse. Talking about sex or bodily functions or anything like that was really unheard of for her. So to be on the stand to expose very personal information that she had to in front of people, this was the hardest thing she would have to do in her life. And I watched most of the trial, and honestly, it was just devastating to hear, especially given that her English was her second language and she grew up in a different culture. It was just so difficult for her to answer the questions. You could tell that she wasn't understanding some of the questions, and
Yeah.
she was trying to answer the best she could. It was just so devastating because the questions that they were asking that she didn't understand were worded in ways
To trip her up.
to trip her up and make her look bad. And it's just so gross. John's attorneys tried to twist her words around. John claimed that he never hurt her, that it was actually her that was the abusive one to him, and that she was crazy, she was angry, and she was jealous. He claimed that he never sexually assaulted her, even though all of his friends said that he bragged about it. They mentioned her close friends like Jana, who had offered her a place to stay, and then they used that against her. Like, oh, so your friend Jana, you're close with her? Yeah. You trust her? Yeah. She offered you a place to stay. Why didn't you take that offer?
Oh, we love hearing that shit.
And it's like, you motherfucker, she did. She did run to Jana's.
Yeah.
She did stay the night. But how many times
Can
is
you
she...
stay the night?
Exactly. And how many times can you take that situation that's at home, that toxic, evil ass situation that you're enduring at home, and bring it to your friend's house? Because he's going to follow you there. Then it's going to be your best friend's problem. Then it's going to be in her house.
Yep.
She don't want to do that. So, yeah, they really, really tried to use everything that they could against her. It was pretty cutthroat and demeaning. She was trembling and sobbing just out of complete fear the entire time. But she showed tremendous strength on the stand in front of all those people. It was a media frenzy. Lorena couldn't go anywhere without being noticed and bombarded with questions. She couldn't even go to the grocery store or anything. And all they wanted to talk about was that her damn husband's dick. That's all they wanted to talk about.
Yep.
No one cared about the abuse that she'd suffered. They just sensationalized this one particular detail. Luckily, her lawyers and the jury cared, though. After hearing her story, her cries, and understanding that the state of psychosis that she was in, the jury agreed that she was experiencing a mental health crisis due to years of abuse. She was found not guilty due to temporary insanity. Now, in the wake of this trial and the OJ trial that would be following suit, we saw the rise in awareness for domestic violence and abuse and the need for more accountability in our judicial system. Congress passed the Violence Against Women Act as part of the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, which essentially recognizes the severity of crimes against women in marital rows like domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Which stalking, I mean, we talked about stalking a couple of months ago. Like, still to this day, it's not seen as stalking if you're married, which just baffles me.
Yeah, because that's what I went through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Marriage is just a fucking contract. What you do with your bodies is different. Like, goddamn.
Apparently not.
Exactly. The two officially divorced in 1995, and Lorena has since changed her name back to her maiden name, Lorena Gallo. Even after this court case, this divorce, all of this fighting, all of this publicity, all of this back and forth, even through all of that, John would still reach out to Lorena from time to time, begging for her to come back to him. After all this shit.
Fucking hate the guy.
I do too. Like, where are you getting the audacity? Where are you picking it up? How much is it? It has to be on sale if you have so much. Can
Put
barely
it
afford a
down.
beer. Like, come on. She's gone on countless talk shows, news programs, and interviews. She handles the jokes with extreme grace that I would not be able to muster. Like she was on the Steve Harvey show or whatever, and there was just a lot of jokes, and she's like, yes, we can laugh about it. We can laugh about it. Penises are funny. But we really have to talk about the fact that domestic abuse and domestic violence is so normalized, and it shouldn't be, and here's why. Like, this just doesn't happen out of nowhere. This happens through chain reactions. And so, I don't know. I really like the way that she kind of handled all of that. She kind of just did a whole bunch just to kind of clear her name and clear the news, and then just completely vanished out of the limelight. She still lives in Manassas, Virginia. She keeps a very quiet life. After the incident, Lorena started dating a man that she had met in college named David Bellinger. The two have been together for over 20 years now. They have a 13-year-old daughter named Olivia. They aren't technically married, but she does call him her husband from time to time. And I feel like that's a big part of his respect for her. I don't know.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think that I don't know. I don't know too much about their relationship, but I just really approve. She seems very happy is what I'm saying. She seems very happy now.
Good.
And she deserves it.
Yes.
She organized the Lorena Gallo Foundation, which aids in sexual assault prevention education, emergency response services, and community resources, as well as safe places for victims who are finding shelter and then recovery afterwards. So she's a really big community leader now, and she's really kind of putting her step forward to make sure that as many people as possible don't experience what she went through. And I think that that's part of a lot of victims' outlook afterwards is, okay, I went through it. Let's not have any more of this.
That's my whole thing.
Absolutely. And yeah, she is still a nail tech, and she is now a hairdresser as well. So go, Lorena. I'm proud of you.
Yes.
Like, I know we don't condone violence. We don't condone cutting off appendages.
No.
But
she was insane at the time.
And yeah, it's really
she was driven that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. He had it coming.
He sure did. All right, so business time. I don't want to. We have a Patreon. We have a Discord. We have merch. Go check out all those things. They're in the link tree.
Yeah.
And if you're on YouTube, like and comment and subscribe and notification bell and all that fucking crap that you do on a YouTube. And if all you want to do is listen, thank you. Appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
We do it for you.
We like you.
We do.
We do like you.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.
Us on your social media platform of choice. Linktree/cruelty has all the links. Check out our Patreon for exclusive episodes, merch, ad-free episodes, live ghost hunts, and much more. Please be sure to subscribe. New episodes are uploaded weekly. Thank you so much. See you next time. Music and production by Libby.